All right, hey everybody. In this video, we are going to discuss 4 signs of a chemical change. And in previous videos, we have looked at the difference between physical and chemical changes. And there we talked about how chemical changes produce a new type of matter, a new substance. And this video is going to be helpful because if you're doing this in a laboratory setting, or maybe looking at a picture or asked on a quiz or an exam to denote if something is a physical or chemical change, there are 4 signs that let you know when something is a chemical change. And if you know these 4 signs, then these types of questions will be pretty easy for you. So I've got these pictures here, and these pictures represent reactions that we're going to jump over to YouTube and watch these quick videos to see if we can learn these 4 signs. Okay, so here's the first video, and in this test tube, there is some hydrochloric acid. So it's a clear liquid, and they're going to drop a piece of zinc metal in it, and we're going to see what happens. So hydrochloric acid and zinc, when the metal's dropped in, what is happening in the test tube. So if you look really closely at the bottom, you can see these bubbles forming all over the metal. And then you start to see the solution begins to bubble. Not too crazy, but there's some continuous bubbling. Depending on the size of your metal, it can be pretty vigorous. So this is a sign of a chemical change. So we can write that down as a sign. So the first sign of a chemical change would be the production of gas. So you can write this as gas bubbles. Okay, other people might write evolution of a gas. But I want to point out a few things here. It's not just that you get 1 or 2 bubbles, but usually it's that you make something that is bubbling. It's continuously releasing a gas as long as the reaction continues. You're going to be releasing a gas, okay? So you should see bubbling as long as the reaction is continuing. Sometimes people might mix things and see 1 or 2 bubbles and that's it. And really, you're looking for a continuous, more vigorous type of bubbling. That's really a true sign of a chemical change. All right, so let's look at the second reaction. All right, so here we are at our next video, and I want to point a few things out. So in this test tube, we have a clear solution. And then this drop up here hanging off of this pipette that's inserted in the test tube, this drop is another clear solution. And usually in one of the solutions, there's some sort of lead compound. There's things dissolved in these solutions. And then in the other solution, there might be some sort of iodide compound. And when those 2 solutions mix, when the lead and the iodine see each other, let's see what happens. It's really kind of cool. So when that drop hits and mixes, all of a sudden this bright yellow, cloudy looking substance starts forming in the solution. And if you look at this cloudy substance, this yellow substance, it's not translucent. You can't see through it. So it's really kind of cool to watch as it spreads throughout. But that is our second sign of a chemical change. So what we can write for this lead iodine reaction, what we call the substance that's forming that yellow substance we call it a precipitate. So the sign here is formation of a precipitate. All right. And what is a precipitate exactly? Well, it's a substance that is not soluble, meaning it won't stay dissolved. Okay, so I mentioned there are things dissolved in those clear translucent solutions, and when they mix and when they react, it's a substance, we say it falls out of solution. It can no longer stay dissolved, or it's no longer soluble. Okay, now what does a precipitate look like? It usually looks like kind of like what you see. It looks cloudy. It doesn't always have to be colored. This one was brightly colored, and that was fun to watch. But for sure, it's going to be cloudy because a precipitate, simply put, is a solid, okay, that is dispensed throughout these liquids. And notice here, the things that we mixed were 2 solutions. And that's kind of a qualifier to even form a precipitate, is you have to mix 2 solutions. So we should make a note of that, mixing 2 solutions. Okay, if you're not mixing 2 solutions, if you're mixing like a metal, like in our first video, a metal and a solution, we can't say we formed a precipitate there. All right, so it's cloudy, we're mixing 2 solutions, and that is the second sign of a chemical change. So let's go to our next video. And, all right, so there's a solution in this dark colored bottle that he's pouring into the beaker with the clear solution, and it's like a purple color, and when it hits, it's actually pretty cool. The color immediately goes away as soon as it mixes. So what we see as a sign of a chemical change here is a color change. All right. Now here, the color was going from dark purple to clear. All right. The color was going away. But the opposite is also true. If you take two clear solutions and you mix them and they become dark purple, any kind of a color change, that is a sign of a chemical change. All right. And I want to make a statement here. What is not a color change is just diluting something. Is not a chemical change. Okay, so diluting is not a chemical change, but a brand new color appearing or disappearing is a sign of a chemical change. All right, so I don't have a video for our fourth sign or even really a picture, and when I tell you what the sign is, it'll kind of make sense as to why. The fourth sign would be a temperature change. Which is not something you can really see, something you can feel. All right, so if we had a test tube and we mix some things together and the test tube all of a sudden feels really warm or hot or gets very cold, that is a sign that a chemical change occurred, all right? But we can't see that, we have to feel it. Now, unless we had a thermometer and we could see the numbers changing on a thermometer, that would be one way you could see it. But I also want to make a point here that a true temperature change is one in which no external heat has been added or removed by, putting something in a freezer or a cooler somehow. So no external heat added or removed. Okay. All right. Those are the 4 signs of a chemical change. I hope this was helpful. If it was, check out other videos. Thank you for watching.